We can't say the future without AI. I mean, there's no way around it. 50% of workers now believe AI is going to improve their experience. When I come into the meeting room, I need a way to incorporate my AI with what's going on in the meeting. It's almost a bring your own AI type of a concept. Most of what we do in our day-to-day is going to change significantly.
Hear the latest AV trends and predictions in this episode of Crestron's Smarter Spaces podcast on your preferred podcast platform.
We wrap up CEDIA Expo, we talk nice OS, and Josh.ai OS. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek. This is ResiWeek, episode 448, Finding Efficiencies. Welcome to this episode of ResiWeek. This is your weekly roundup of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matt D. Scott, and pleased to be joined by my good friend today, Mr. Arlen Schweiger. He is the editor-in-chief of CE Pro. How you doing, Arlen?
I'm doing great, Matt. Just got back from a fun week out in Denver. So, time to recharge. Just every year that kind of does that for me. I also always come back home and really want to crank up my audio system. So it's another fun thing that the show gets me revved up for.
All excited about it. I love it. We were supposed to be joined by Mr. Whitaker, but he is under the weather today, still recovering from the show. So you are going to be treated to a wonderful conversation between Arlen and myself as we cover, obviously a bunch of stuff that went on the last week and some press out of it. So first of all, before we jump into stories, Arlen, tell me a little bit. You were at the show. I was watching from afar. What was it like on the ground? What did you see that was super exciting for you? What was the vibe?
I thought the vibe was very positive this year. There was a lot of traffic, I would say as usual, toward the front of the show floor because of all the large companies that were there. They had their dealers who I'm sure were looking for the exciting news. You had Crestron up there, Lutron, a lot of the audio companies, Sonos was up there. I would say from my standpoint, probably the biggest thing that I experienced in going from, booth to booth during the show was that a lot of companies were really talking about efficiency. A lot of companies were talking about how to get dealers to be less intimidated by entering new product categories. And I saw that a lot with the LED lighting companies. And, they're big into saying, hey, it's not as daunting as you think about. We help you with the designs, and a lot of the shading companies were saying the same thing. Motorized shades, of course, is still becoming a huge category. I would say another one of the categories that we've been tracking that's been really hot the last few years and still going is the outdoor category. Yep. And so I did see a lot of outdoor solutions. I went out to the Destination Outdoors, saw some Coastal Source, which I had seen earlier this year, really impressive lighting and audio solutions out there. Just overall, I would say those were kind of the main things. In terms of like the AV wow factor, unfortunately, I didn't go to enough demos to be able to speak to that, but I certainly saw some demos, and I saw some great, again, almost kind of entry-level, more budget-friendly systems for clients, for integrators to pitch to clients. And I would say that would be the kind of the JBL. They had their synthesis demo at Harman, which is obviously the super high end. Yeah. But then they had a system that I think was put together, I want to say for $1,700 was part of the demo, and it sounded phenomenal. So I think that was another thing where they're looking to get more, kind of a wider customer pool from the, for the dealers to choose from and maybe bolster their business that way.
Yeah, it's great to hear. Pretty much the majority of feedback I got from the show essentially drilled down into the concise factor of it being heavy in audio, which is honestly nice for a change. And a huge lighting push, which we've obviously been talking about for quite a while and talking about on the show for quite a while. But it's, again, it's nice to see that happening and see the commitment from brands that are not necessarily typically just within our channel. which again, we continue to see that more and more at the show.
Yes, and I totally wish I had more time to go see some of the sound rooms because I'm sure they were great. Sony actually had obviously they had their large AV theater demo, so I could tell you the Sony audio was awesome. But it was interesting because they actually had an audio focused demo. They were celebrating, I think it's the 60th anniversary of their ES line, and so on the street level floor where you walk in before you have to take the escalator up to the show floor, they had their another demo room there that they were showcasing just audio, focusing on the ES products. So I would agree with that. Lighting, of course, was everywhere. I would definitely agree with that. As I mentioned before, shades, plenty of that as well. And I think as people saw at Lightapalooza, there was a lot more, different types of power management, energy management. Those kind of companies, I think, had a lot more traction this year too.
Yeah, it's super cool. All right, let's jump into our first story of the day, coming to us from CE Pro. Nice OS 8.9 is here, and it comes with a new voice assistant for home control. Again, if you don't know Nice, they are a European company that has a ton of experience, obviously, in Europe, but they are continuing to make a strong push into North America. Part of that is because they brought on Paul Williams, who is their home management business unit managing director. Arlen, when you see what Nice has been doing, they are making a lot of inroads, but they're still not, in my opinion, they don't seem to be yet mentioned alongside the traditional automation companies in the space, at least in North America. What are the new advancements that they're doing, and how does that entice? How can they entice the North American market to give them a quality look?
Well, first, I'd say that in terms of the branding, we're still seeing the impact of them having to, their mission to consolidate the brands and have it just be the known name of Nice. So I still think, and remember, that was coming from a company that had branding problems for years, whether it was Nortec Linear, Nortec Security and Controls, all those different things. So that's the first thing. And obviously that was a big push for them last year when they finalized all those plans. And so when I went through the booth, and you're right, last year I went through the booth with Paul Williams, and he's excellent. He was the chief product officer back then. Clearly, he is a super intelligent guy, and I think they have the right person in charge of what they now call their home management program, I would say. You're right about where they are in the industry. We do our CE Pro 100 brand analysis every year. In terms of whole house automation companies, it's always, the biggies at the top. And then I want to say Nice is usually in there around 7th or 8th, right, with the way that it's structured. So yeah, there's a lot of room for improvement there. And I think they're an Italian company. And I spoke to their president, Emmanuel, at the show, and he admitted, he said, we have to have more name recognition in the US and North America, because he basically kind of said what you were saying. And so this new OS 8.9 is a way for them to start doing that. They've been expanding into categories. Last year, they unveiled their own shading lines. And that could be a real sweet spot for them, because one thing that they like to sort of pay attention to or give attention to is the fact that they make their own motors. So they don't have to rely on a Somfy like a lot of the companies do. So that could be a really sweet category for them. And then they came out with their HR40 remote, which is gorgeous. It's won awards. Their interface is really great. And then they have, some neat features with it that I still think are unique in the industry. I don't know if anyone else has facial recognition. And that came about from one of their acquisitions several years ago. And I think that's pretty cool, where you could just walk up to a touch panel and it will recognize you and come up with all of your settings, presets. And so I would say that, but also remember, they still have the power companies like, Furman and Panamax. And that's also a growing category. So I think certainly they're expanding on things, and I think there's a lot of room for them to grow and to show that, hey, this is, we're really dedicated to the custom industry. Obviously, we're a huge company, but this is going to be a, profitable, marketable. This is a very big division for us.
Yeah, I think they brought over the facial rec and the Bluetooth low energy stuff from 2GIG, because 2GIG's had facial rec in their panels for a handful of years. And I believe that's where it came from. I could be wrong on that, but that's my understanding. I want to see NICE continue to advance and be more forward facing as far as, competing with the standard automation companies that you think of. And I think it really just is that branding issue that's going to take time for people to take a lawn, which had a great reputation for the most part, and not have to, have that fun conversation with dealers of, no, you know us, we're a lawn, but we're now NICE. So yeah, it's that. And I think once they get past that, once that recognition grows and people kind of have a better understanding, or can instantly tag those, the consolidation of brands that they have together, I think that'll let them really, compete back up at that level with them, with all the other players.
Yeah, and I think they certainly realize that. It's even when I was going around the booth and getting a tour, when we were looking at their loudspeakers, architectural loudspeakers, and they're really nice and they're really integrator installation friendly, as they always have been. But it was like, well, we're not referring to them as speakercraft this year, and just having that is a little bit like,
but they're speakercraft, right?
Oh, okay, we get that, right? But definitely, we get Home of the Year awards projects sent to CE Pro, and no one puts NICE automation.
Yeah.
They put Arlen automation. So it's some of the things that they certainly have to work on. Absolutely.
All right. Since we're talking automation, let's flip over to a story that comes to us from Residential Tech Today. Josh.ai launches AI-powered OS, ships their Josh touchscreen, and debuts Josh Edge, their new aluminum remote. Excuse me. This is something that, we've been hearing inklings of a lot of this coming over the last little bit, as far as the touchscreen, which is going to complement their Ava Cinema remote as well. The biggest thing, obviously, that they're talking about in this story is the included AI aspects in their OS, as well as some of the other cool things like door length that they're bringing, etc. When you look at this and when you follow what Josh is doing, they're not the only one touting AI. And I don't want to just talk about the AI aspect, but I like talking about AI. So here we are. One of the things that I'm always intrigued with AI and the way companies, manufacturers specifically, are using it is to what level they're using it. Is it just using it as kind of like a hot button topic that anyone can use and put out there and utilize a little bit of the technology and then brand everything as we're running behind AI? I saw a hot tub company the other day locally here, and they've rebranded all of their trucks with home wellness experts, and they stinking sell hot tubs, but they're jumping on the wellness marketing ploy. And again, I'm impressed. It's great work. And I'm not trying to take anything away from Josh at all. What I'm asking is, are we to the point where we, as an industry, where we look at AI as anything more than just, okay, cool, you're doing something with it, that's great, I don't really care, just keep giving me quality product? Or are we delving into how they're actually using AI, and does that actually benefit us as dealers or our customers as homeowners?
I think to the extent of the way AI is being used in automation, I would say it's one of those things. I don't know what the interest level is, but there are definitely different ways of going about it, depending on what kind of company you have. And so Josh includes it in its name. Obviously, they're huge into it with the programming, the voice improvements, the natural language improvements. It's funny that you mentioned the company that had changed their name to include wealth, not health. I'm sorry, and wellness. Because honestly, I don't want to say this has been just an industry problem, but a societal thing that's happened. Because remember about 12, 13 years ago when we had everything was going green. Manufacturers, well, we're using recycled cardboard now because we're green. Just different things that they had to show how sustainable they were. And I think it was a trend at that time. It came and went. And then we got to the health and wellness aspect of it. And the health and wellness, well, with green, we started calling it greenwashing, as like, hey, you're being a little bit too liberal with your use of the word green. And I think we had the same thing with wellness. And I think we still have that because, Matt, you probably know, I'm sure you get the newsletters from CES every year, and how many products claim to have wellness in them when, I mean, come on, it could be like an automatic toothbrush and it's wellness because it makes your teeth cleaning easier these days with technology. So, I hate to say AI is that there's a lot of AI washing out there, and I'm not sure if that's the case with Josh.ai. I don't think it is. I just think it's more of an incremental thing that it's a buzzword that they just hear a lot, and so they go along with it, and it just, it's like contagious with people using it. And I mean, from what I can see, the thing about having a more natural voice assistant, I think that's very cool. And that sounds like a good use or good description for an AI function. We talked about this for a minute before our call when we talked about just the implementation of AI in what they call image gen, which it's generating images for customizing every client's user interface. Honestly think most clients would turn that down for controls and probably rather have photos of each room in their house or their kids or, and that could be just my opinion, but I know that kind of personalization is really fun for homeowners out there, and I could see that doing it again. The JoshGPT 2.0, I think, has a lot of potential where they're talking about generative knowledge for intelligent living, and I think that's again the AI eventually learns your habits, and that's where anyone that I've talked to in home automation, and I've asked them about, hey, what's AI's impact really going to be? And that's what they say. AI is going to learn your habits. And I'm not sure how that will translate, honestly, because we had the Nest learning thermostat, and the Nest learning thermostat, most people turned off, or the integrators turned off that learning ability.
Well, and it was a great way to sell thermostats.
It was, exactly. Again, it's that marketing, People like to think that the AI is what it is. Honestly, Matt, for one thing, I could say with the GPT and learning from your habits, we've evaluated an AI, I guess for lack of a better word, writing program at Emerald, and I was part of the testing for that. And we tried doing it, giving it a lot of, I would say, commands that are supposed to be via AI, where it's remixing, regenerating stories for us, making certain lists of all that, and supposedly learning like the voice of our CE Pro. It'll learn the voice of you and try to start making articles that sound like you. And what we discovered is that it's a very good marketing tool. It's a not so good editorial tool. There are very limited functions that we could see now. So I think it's almost sort of the same case that we're seeing with AI, and the really sharp implementation that I've seen of it is in the security industry between surveillance cameras, NVRs or video management systems, access control systems, and they call all that, or they called all that advanced analytics. And to me, that was a perfect term for it. They were analyzing, the surveillance cameras were analyzing the field of view. They were bringing data over to as an edge device to the systems. To me, that was fine. To me, AI, we're doing a little AI washing, I guess, as I would have said with the other categories.
Yeah, and again, I'm not trying to pick on Josh. They are always at the forefront, and they have been for years. Just in the tech side in general, they're doing a lot of really interesting stuff. Again, utilizing AI. Just as an interesting side note, this will release on Wednesday, and we're recording on Monday. On Tuesday, Apple's holding their next developer event, and supposed to be releasing the new iPhone, which is supposed to have native Apple. I can't remember what they call it. I think it's just Apple Intelligence, which is their on device AI. That again is supposed to be significantly better than Siri. Blah 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 blah. It will be interesting to see what that fleshes out like. And obviously I haven't predicted anything, because when you listen to this, it'll already be out, and that takes the fun away from it.
For one thing, with the just the amount of people using Josh.ai, I will say from our brand analysis in which we poll, the highest revenue integrators, this was the first year that Josh actually jumped over Alexa, which has always been the dominant number one thing. And so just that alone, it tells me obviously they're doing a lot right, as you said. And it will be interesting to see what they do if, there are lots of updates to Siri's technology and everything like that. I will say, so clearly some of the biggest integrators out there have a lot of their faith in Josh being around for a while.
No, definitely. They're doing some fantastic stuff. All right, let's hit our last story of the day quickly. This comes to us from Residential Systems. Daisy has acquired SaaviHome and is opening a new Palm Springs location. You'll remember a couple months ago, we talked about SaaviHome, and Gavin Lancey, who has kind of created this franchise model for home integration companies. And he had a couple of franchises that he opened up in Colorado. Daisy is obviously in that same vein, but they have been expanding at a very impressive rate. And this is an interesting move for them to acquire Savvy and then to move Gavin into their VP. I think, I'm sorry, I lost it for a second. Their new franchisee sales and success leader for Daisy. There it is. You've done an in-depth interview or profile on Daisy. They're doing some very interesting stuff right now. Is this kind of combination of multi-location / franchise model, is this going to be the future of the residential integration market?
I'm not sure if it's going to be the future of it. I think we'll always have, the regular companies. I will say, though, it's kind of falling in line with, residential. We're not quite where commercial AV is, pro AV, but we've had a definite rise in the number of mergers and acquisitions among big companies basically since COVID. And in terms of what Daisy wants to do, I definitely think they're going to expand the consumer pool. Now, whether that is it going to be on the high end? Are they going to expand it on the middle market? Are they going to try and maybe do even more of an entry level with so many locations out there? But their plan, Hagen Kapler, their founder, president, she is an incredibly smart woman. She has worked at lots of service companies. She actually was the pioneer or the brains behind Starbucks' blonde roast brand. Their blonde roast marketing with their coffee. I mean, her background is super in the business world, and I think she has great vision as to what their company, at least how pervasive it should be when people want to think of a national integrator, of which, of course, we know that there really still hasn't been one. And when I talk to them, this is still like just the tip of the iceberg. They want to either create via acquisition or what they call conversion to franchises, or start, opening their own, basically 25 or 26 by the end of 2024. And depending on how that progresses, I'm sure we could see much more of that next year as well, because they'll already have the reputation that they're having now. So I don't think it's quite the future, but I will say between them, there's Bravis out there with a lot of locations that they had gotten together. Honestly, it's, they contacted us quite a bit before the expo, but prior to that, I hadn't heard too much from them. But remember, I think they have about 15 locations, and Daisy wants to get to 25 by the end of the year, and they're not just selecting any old company. Like, they have Gordon Van Zyden's Cybermanor. They have I think it's going to be more like that. They might go for some of the bigger fish out there, but I think they're going to open a lot of their own brands. I would say one thing about franchising, and I was reminded of this when we were talking about Savvy and about Daisy, is that I need to give props to CEDIA board member Jen Mallett, whose company, Level Up Automation, they actually have done lots of franchising in the Northeast. They're based in Massachusetts. So she reminded me of that, and they've been doing that for quite a bit. I can't remember exactly how many locations they have now. I think it's in the 20s, but just to give them some props. So it has been done, I think, maybe more regionally. Of course, we know that some companies, they have multiple locations already. Whether they expand, they might do that by acquisitions. Take a look at a company like Y Pliance, where they go into Washington, they're going to Arizona, and maybe they'll add here and there. But whole scale franchise model, I don't think we'll ever quite get there. Like obviously we call ADT, we refer to them as an integrator. I can't imagine another company doing anything near that expansive, or even some of the large security / integrators out there.
How much of this is really just a changing of the guard, though? My view on it, again, from quite a distance away, is that a lot of the companies that are being folded into most of these orgs, they've got a legacy owner who isn't ready to retire, doesn't necessarily have someone internally that they're going to pass it on to. It's an easy, and I don't want to simplify it down to like it's an easy paycheck, but it is a good way for a lot of older integrators who've been doing this for 30, 40 years to get a great, clean exit and still be involved a little bit, right? We're seeing that, or I think we're seeing that, but I'm also seeing a huge push from private equity making a jump into the service industry from like home service businesses. If you listen to any of the big, younger business podcasts, they're all talking about go find a roofing company where the owner's 72 and, still struggling to get up the ladder, and go buy if he's got a good book and he's got this, you can go buy that. You can turn a profit and you can market it and throw some, a fancy website and flip it. We're starting to see that. Is that going to have any impact on the home theater world, the integration world?
I think so. I think it's pretty logical that the private equity is going into more of this, into more of the technology. More of the technology is becoming part of the service industries. Obviously at CE Pro, we've been preaching about having service contracts for years and years and years. I've always sort of seen, if you can have those subscriber bases, I talked about the security industry earlier, and I, didn't necessarily mean to come back to it, but they have been the kings of the service industry. They know exactly what to do. They make a lot of recurring revenue, and there's a lot of PE that's gone into the security industry. Just, a huge amount of money being spent in it, being forecast to be spent over the next 5 years. We're talking about billions of dollars forecasted for the market, which I think in the latest reports that we see that the home technology industry, I want to say, is seemingly about the same size, the way that it's being expanded all the time with different categories, of course. So I think it makes sense for them to come into this industry. I think we know that homeowners have gotten much more used to paying for services. And I think that the smart people are going to get into that. It's funny. I mean, you mentioned a roofing contractor. It's been one of those things for years where I talked about security. I also throw in their electrician. Because those industries, not every integrator does security as something that they integrate. They might do maybe video surveillance or maybe a video doorbell, but a lot of times they hire or they have third-party relationships with, tried and true, I guess we'd call them maybe pure play security dealers. And a lot of them would also have relationships with electricians. I think a lot of them, smart companies have hired electricians onto their staffs, but some of them, like that was just a market that they had to hire as a subcontractor. And, for one thing, it's easier to have those on your team. And you look at those markets and you see how much they earn. Look at an electrician. You're talking about someone who's always busy, always has a job. And if integrators can have on all their jobs say, hey, yeah, we've got the electrician, you don't have to worry about that, and we're going to make the money for it. To me, that's kind of a no-brainer to do. And like I said, the homeowners pay for services these days, a lot of them on a monthly basis. They're paying for yard landscaping services. They're paying for pest control. Clearly, they're paying for a lot of media content, if you want to call that a service. It's a content service. They're paying for internet service, cell service, all these kind of things. So to me, it makes sense that PE wants to get in there. And I totally agree with you about the exit strategy. We know that certainly that can be a very tough thing for companies to go through, especially companies that have been running the same way for 40 years and, aren't necessarily up to date on all the business operations technology, maybe don't know their evaluations all that well. And, I think someone like Daisy could come in and, like I said, they could be selective about it, but they could also help out companies, I think, that are looking to sell and really take a good look at them. And, I think they'll probably understand that the company is very successful, and maybe the integrator who wants to get out of it doesn't have to do maybe all the nitty gritty stuff that, where we see this a lot on the security side, maybe not quite to that level. So I think it'll be interesting to see at least how Daisy goes about with it. But I guess it's a long-winded way of saying that it's not going to be, widespread.
Yeah, we'll see. It'll be very interesting to watch. All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you joining us today. If people want to connect with you, learn more about CE Pro, where can they do that?
Sure. They could go to cepro.com. We're in the midst of a lot of CEDIA Expo coverage right now. So hopefully people read that, and they can hit me up on email at arlen.schweiger@emeraldx.com or find me at LinkedIn with that name as well. So thanks, Matt. I really appreciate it, even though it was a solo effort today.
Oh, it was a lot of fun today. All right. Thank you again for joining us. If you'd like to connect with me, you can find me on Twitter or X at Matt D. Scott and pretty much most other social platforms. But more importantly, please visit AVNation.tv, where you'll find this show as well as a wide variety of other shows with all the verticals that we cover. When you visit the website, please take a moment to check out our supporters. We are extremely thankful for their support and ask that you check them out as well. Thanks again for watching. That's all the time we have for this episode of ResiWeek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
Hello, this is Steve Greenblatt, host of AVNation's Estate of Control podcast. Each month, Rich Fregosa and I explore trending topics related to control programming and automation in the audiovisual industry. We speak with a variety of AV professionals who share their perspectives, knowledge, and experiences. Please join us for this monthly conversation. Check out Estate of Control on avnation.tv or wherever you get your podcasts.